The Susan Brender Show is a radio show online broadcasted on YouTube across the United States and globally. The show features guests who speak about health, spirituality, entertainment, and a host of subjects to enlighten people across the nation. Listen to the show that empowers women and men alike and highlights those who have made a difference.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today, I have a guest on my show by the name of Russell Vann. Now, I want to say something that I think is very important, and that is that we live in a woke society, and so many people are born to just a single parent, and that, from my standpoint, is a problem. Now, let's talk a little bit about Russell. Russell was born in the South Bronx in the late 60s to a drug-addicted mother. There you go. This is what I was talking about, who didn't know who his father was, and into a world that he didn't want. Growing up, he faced a life of death situations every step of the way. It seemed anyway. Now, not only has he struggled to overcome my own specters, he says, but also those of my environments. And I want to welcome to the Susan Brender Show, Russell Vann.
Thank you. Hello, Susan. How are you?
I'm fine, and I'm reading your book, and wow, this is really amazing. I started to write these books, he says, as a form of therapy. In doing so, he realized that the people around him throughout his life had been dealing with their own misfortunes. Russell, I want to ask you, when you talk about misfortunes, what do you mean by that?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. First, misfortune. I believe in it crosses all barriers and color lines and nationalities. Is poverty. And where I came from, it was rampant. And through poverty comes boredom, which sometimes results in drug use and frustration and all sorts of nefarious things. So that's what I mean.
Yeah. So you wrote this book for a form of therapy. Is it doing that for you? Is it helping you feel better about yourself?
Well, that was 10 years ago when I started writing the books. There's a series, Ghetto Bastard and Ghetto Bastard 2, and then Ghetto Bastard 3, Life After Death. And definitely it has therapeutic values, but just as life itself, every day is a learning process. Every day you're meeting new people, you're experiencing new things. We're growing older as human beings. So, writing it down and being a writer, because I'm also working on book 4, The American Dream, Ghetto Bastard, The American Dream. It's all therapy because when you're writing it down, it gives you a different perspective, especially when you read it, it takes you back to that time. But at that time, I may have been 30 or 40 years old. Now I'm 54. So my mindset is differently. So it's absolutely a special kind of therapy continuously.
You've overcome many obstacles affiliated with living in the ghetto. I want you to tell people what it's like to live in a ghetto, because ghettos are brought about and exist for poor people. And I don't think, I'll give you my personal, drift on this. And that is that I think these projects are really a way for criminals to do their thing. And I wonder what you experience when you live there.
Great question, and thank you for asking. What's so great about what you just asked is that my books answer your questions from the outside looking in. A lot of people are very curious because the actuality of it is, if you've never lived in the ghetto, you don't know the ghetto except for what the media's narrative has portrayed the ghetto. In the ghetto, if I was on the outside looking in and looking at all of the movies and the narratives that have been displayed, I would think that it was filled of nothing but criminals and drug addicts and rapists and murderers and people that belong in jail and thugs and hoodlums. But one of the reasons that I wrote Ghetto Bastard is because I'm from the ghetto and I'm neither of any of those things. And what I wanted to portray was that, yes, you have a bad elements in the ghetto, but the majority of the ghetto, like I said in the beginning of the conversation, the biggest challenge in the ghetto is poverty, because what happens is it's hereditary. And when you start, people are poor, sometimes hungry, their mindset, they don't think correctly. And going to your question, living in the ghetto, if there was love, and then what was great was that I had a loving great grandmother. When I lived in the ghetto, being raised by your grandmother was not so unusual, because there were a lot of teenage parents and women that didn't raise their kids. And as a matter of fact, to this day, and you're talking 50 something years ago, to this day, the out of wedlock percentage in the ghetto is almost 70%. So 70% of women out here are having children out of wedlock. And what happens when that many people are having children out of wedlock is that the children now become statistics, not human beings. And those statistics are what fills up the jails. In the ghetto, sometimes people learn to skirt around things and look through things, like buying something stolen because they want things cheaper. Sometimes they look past doing drugs because they saw their parents smoking marijuana or sniffing cocaine or whatever they did. They saw them drinking alcohol. So this behavior became adapted. This was their school outside of school. Besides their ABCs, their life lessons were being taught by what they saw. And what they saw was being taught by people who lived in the ghetto. So that's why the behavior perpetuated.
Something, I used to talk about this situation because I lived in Manhattan, and in Manhattan, there was quote unquote a ghetto. And what I saw was people in poverty. And I think there was a man who actually started it. And the reason I say that is because he wanted to put people all together, poor people. And P.S., as you said, what do you find there? Drugs, single parents, all of those things. And it's really it's a travesty. Now, let me ask you something. Let's really talk about your book, because your book really mentions all these things and teaches people things, doesn't it?
Yes, and it was so great. I don't want to sound anything crazy, but it's kind of a book for Caucasian people to say everything you wanted to know about the ghetto, but were afraid to ask.
Afraid to ask. You think people are afraid to ask for a reason?
Absolutely. I think people are afraid to ask because on the other side, there's not everything seems so aggressive. And I'm talking about my side. I'm not, saying that. And when sometimes people are asking out of curiosity, they're automatically labeled as racist or something like that. And sometimes people are just curious because they don't know. I don't know a lot about European communities. I don't know about Polish people. I don't know about German people. I mean, I know that there are people that exist, but I don't know their culture. I don't know their background. I don't know their beliefs. And all those people have different kind of beliefs and different structures and different things like that. It doesn't make them any different. They're just different kind of people. So for me to assume any kind of behavior would be ignorant. So I think a lot of times that's what happens is there's an ignorance in the people that are responding because they think everything is taken as an insult instead of as a curiosity. This book, because I have a certain European lineage, I fortunately grew up in an environment that I wasn't privy to a biased mentality against Black or white.
Yeah. Russell, I'll tell you something. I used to work at a place where my colleague was African American. And one day I said to her, I would like you to come to my house. I'm having a party. And her answer to me was, Susan, I can't come. And I said to her, why? Why can't you come? And she said, because I feel like I would be an outsider. Is that one of the things that Black people feel about whites?
I'm going to give you an example, and just in your conversation right there. It's not purposeful. It's just people don't understand, and society has a lot to do with it too. when we speak about an Italian person, we say Italian. When we say this person, we say they're German, they're Jewish. But sometimes when we refer to Black people, we say African American, as if to put that secondary citizenship on there instead of just saying Black person. I prefer just Black person because I've never been to Africa. So I think inadvertently sometimes people say things and they don't understand because it's just either the culture, because at one time, Black people, instead of just being called Black people, they have every kind of name in the book for them. So I'm just stuck on history, and this is what has been embedded in Black people. And maybe that's why sometimes they get so defensive. You know, back in the day, you know, they was the N-word, then they were Negroes, then they were colored, then they were Afro-American, you know, according to their hairstyle. And then they were Black Americans, and they were African Americans. So they were always being defined in some way, shape, form, or fashion instead of just Black. You know what I mean?
Right. You know, I had a very interesting experience, Russell. I went to a place called Fisk University, and that was to interview a bunch of people who were the peaceful people, the Martin Luther people. And I know, and I'm going to tell you the truth, there were whites standing outside throwing rocks at them, but they walked down the street with no animosity. They just said, we're going to walk down the street because we feel that we want peace. Now, did you feel the same way? And have you met, many Black people who feel the same way, that all this crime that's taking place is really a travesty?
Well, let me say they are better people than I am, because I'm not going to walk down the street and let somebody throw rocks at me, because I'm going to throw some back. Absolutely. Black people, working class, decent Black people think that the crime and looting and all that stuff is a travesty. You know why? Because we have jobs. We pay property taxes. We understand that we have to work for everything we get. So it's easy for, and I'm going to say it, ignorant people to turn around and destroy and steal and take things that don't belong to them. But when you earn those things, you have a deeper value and appreciate those things. So of course, us Black people, we don't like that kind of stuff. Any kind of people would, what kind of people would like that kind of stuff?
Nobody. You know, the people who were walking down were really saying to themselves, we're strong. We're not going to accept the fact that there are many people who really want to admonish us and really damage us. But let's get back to your book. What ways can we connect with you? There must be a way to connect with you. Would you tell us how?
Are you talking about the book? Or are you talking about with Russell Vann, the Ghetto Bastard series itself?
The whole series.
You can go to ghettobastard.com. And what's great about going to ghettobastard.com, they have a young lady on there that reads the first chapter. So you can get an excerpt from the book, or you can pick it up on Amazon. It's from Amazon bestseller. So Amazon, Russell Vann, RussellVann. And that's how you can get in contact with me.
Right.
Facebook, Russell Vann.
Yeah. What about your goal for the series? You must have some kind of goal, because you're writing now the fourth book. So what is your goal?
Well, my goal is going to be a 6-part series. But one I'm writing now, Ghetto Bastard 4, The American Dream is called. Then my next book is going to be called Godly Man, which is going to be the Ghetto Bastard's journey with God, because that's another oversight that people don't understand, is that there's a lot of people in the ghetto who, we believe in God. We believe, in the higher being. We're not all thugs and junkies and pimps and prostitutes and stuff like that. And we don't like those people that do those things in our neighborhoods also. So
Russell, you talked about faith and religion. Where did that come from? Because it sounds like your family didn't instill that in you. You just said that you will feel that going to a church and really thinking about how you feel your faith. What is faith to you?
Well, my and the book goes into this, but I was raised by my great grandmother. My grandfather's mother actually raised me. And what's the oddity was that she wasn't really a religious woman, but she took me to church, a Catholic church every Sunday, a church in the South Bronx. I don't know if it's still there. It was a parochial school in a church also called St. Angela's. And she took me every Sunday. This started about when I was about 5 years old. And that started the seed. And like anybody knows, in our faith with God, it starts with a seed. And if you search, like the Bible says, if you're seeking, you shall find. If you're searching with your heart, you're going to find that higher power. And to me, my faith, my religion is in God, and it's in that higher power. And I'm a Christian, so of course I believe in Jesus Christ. But it's living my life, just constantly searching, constantly trying to improve myself. And I look at it, I'm looking at the big picture, and I haven't always thought like this. I'm thinking about it like that now. But I'm hoping that in the end, when it's time for them to review my life, my good deeds will outweigh my bad deeds. And so if I live my life that way, treat people in life the way I want to be treated, if I was in any position they were in, if I was homeless, how would I want people to treat me? If I was this, if I was that, how would I want people to treat me? Because you never know in this life where you can end up. Yeah. So it's better to always treat the people down at the bottom as best you can, because you never know, you might be in that same situation.
Yeah, Russell, you sound like a man with a lot of faith and a lot of understanding of the way people live. Now, my question to you is, what are you doing now besides writing? Do you have a job? Are you married? Do you have a family? What's your situation?
My book also has that. My book goes into that, because that's another thing, that people from the ghettos have families too. Now, I don't live in the ghetto anymore, but yes, I do have a job in the criminal justice system. I've been married to my wife for 26 years. We were in a relationship for almost 40 years. I have 3 children. One is 33, the other one is 30, the other one is 23, and I have a grandson that's going to be 13. And I'm trying to live the American dream and just moving forward and progressing and just taking care of family and making sure that we're healthy. We're at that stage later on in life where you're trying to make sure that you're doing the best things for your health as possible. But every day it's just what we say, doing that grind and trying to do the best that you can to get ahead in this world, especially with the environment and the high prices of things going on. And you just and us middle people, we're not necessarily poor, but we're not rich. As middle class people, which they'll eventually get rid of that too. We're just doing that grind every day and just trying to get ahead.
What do you think about critical race theory?
Now, this is so funny. I hear about people talking about it all the time, but I never look into it. But here's my theory. I'm going to give you the Russell Vann Ghetto Bastard theory. Okay?
Good. I want to hear about it.
I can take 5 babies, 4 babies, whatever the number is, all different race, creeds, and colors, and raise them and bring them all together to love each other. And that's all they would do, love each other. The past is the past. We can't change it. That's in life itself. All we can do is learn from it and move forward. If I keep rehashing the past, I'm never going to be able to move forward. That's what I think it is. That's the Russell Vann Ghetto Bastard theory.
It sounds like the Russell Vann series teaches people quite a bit. And in fact, does your family support your career as a writer? Because you write, and all of your books sound like they really are educational, totally educational, teaching people, teaching kids. And who is your audience?
All genres, because we grow as people. So the book goes from 1968 to about 2008. So you're speaking of the up and coming from adolescent years to my teenage years to my early 20s and in the ghetto, and life changes and your thought process changes. So, or you a teenager in the suburbia might want to know what it was like for a teenager living in the South Bronx, in the ghetto infested South Bronx, with no mother and father, by his great grandmother, because they see the results of it all the time, but they don't know that where it came from.
Russell, let me ask you something. Do you really think that your great grandmother made a big difference in your life? Because it sounds like she really did. Did she?
Well, she was the family support, like what we were saying. You were asking me about whether your family support. She taught me how to be the family man that I am, because a lot of people from the ghetto don't have that family structure. Now, she was a single woman. She had a husband and she was taking care of an elderly mother at that time, and she was about 60. So to take me in right there, she had a high family moral value. She was about family. And I appreciated it more when I became a parent and I understood that taking in a child, taking care of a child, just wasn't me going to live with her. She had to take me to school every day. She had to feed me. She had to clothe me. She had to guide me. She had to nurture me and take care of her mother and take care of her husband and go to work every day. And she had a job. She was a waitress and she was on her feet all day. So when I think about family support and I think about my grandmother, a lot of decisions, a lot of things that I do, a lot of my guidelines, a lot of my family structure is based on her, watching her and understanding her now more than I did when she took me in, of course.
Yeah. Russell, you're not the only one who grew up in a poor neighborhood and had all those issues with your mother being an addict and all those other things that you talked about. Look at Powell. Okay. Now he grew up also in the ghetto. After a while, his mother taught him, his mother was his real influence, and she taught him to be a good guy. And what happened was he became a general in the army. Okay. So, you think that everybody really is so sad and so angry and so fearful of their life. But look at these other people who accomplished so much things in their life, and now they give talks. Now, did you ever think about giving a talk to kids in schools?
Absolutely. I would like that. I just want to go back to Colin Powell for a minute, because I actually read part of the book, his autobiography, the other day, ironically. And there's a difference between Colin Powell and those 70% of minorities in the same area, because he grew up in the same area as I did. Because when I was reading the book, I recognized everything. He had a mother and a father. They had a family structure. They came from Jamaica. They had people that helped them out. The whole area was different back then. When you're talking Colin Powell, you're talking almost 70, 80 years ago. And it was a highly Jewish neighborhood. Whites and Jews and blacks were the minorities. Blacks and Puerto Ricans were the minorities at that time. So the whole environment was totally different. It wasn't drug infested. I mean, you might have had your drugs, your little stuff, but it wasn't like it is now, or what it was when I was growing up. So he had that family support. He had that mother and father structure to come home to every day. He knew, when he went home, there was food to eat. He also had his uncles around and cousins around. They had a family support that, and sometimes as Jamaican immigrants, they do that also. They still do that today. They're family group oriented. So he had that growing up in the South Bronx. If you go to the very same areas that he grew up in, it would be unrecognizable.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Things have changed dramatically, but we're at the end of the show. So I want you to repeat what you told me before, and that is how people get in touch with you and how they get your books.
Well, you can reach me you can go to ghettobastard.com. And like I said, there's a little television there that if you play it, It'll give you an excerpt, a lady reading the actual excerpt from the book, or you can go to Amazon, Russell Vann, RussellVann. Look for Ghetto Bastard, Russell Vann.
Well, we've had Russell Vann on our show today, who is an inspiration to everyone because he grew up in a really, really poor area. And now he has written books that teach people, that educate people, that give people an idea of how they can make life better for themselves. And I want to thank you, Russell Vann, for being on the Susan Brender Show. Thank you very much.
Thank you.